Okay, I think we're ready to start. Good morning, everyone. That's good morning for everyone in Canada and good afternoon for everyone in Kenya. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Catherine. I'm the stewardship specialist at the Humanitarian Coalition. So I'm very happy to have everyone join us. This will be recorded, so it will be available after this event for you to see again or to share. We will communicate the link once this event is over. This is the first time we are doing an event like this. We have organized this and invited you, our donors, to this event. We are always amazed by your compassion and generosity when we launch appeals like we did this summer for the hunger crisis in the Horn of Africa. Your generosity is just outstanding, and we were very touched and amazed by the results. So we were able to raise $10.6 million for the hunger crisis appeal, including $5 million from a government matching fund. And so the objective this morning, we always say that it makes a difference, and we want to be able to show you what kind of difference it makes. And we felt there was no better way to do this than for you to be able to hear and speak from the people who are experiencing this firsthand. So just a quick reminder on who we are. So the Humanitarian Coalition is a mechanism which brings 12 of the most reputable organizations in Canada together to respond to emergency crises like the hunger crisis. Canadian Foodgrains Bank is one of our members, and they work with local partners on the ground, such as PWRDF and CWS. So it is my pleasure this morning to now introduce you to Mary Obiero, who works with CWS. So I will pass this along to Mary, and please introduce yourself and your team.
Thank you very much. Good morning to friends from Canada and good afternoon to colleagues in Kenya. My name is Mary Obiero. I work for Church World Service as Program Director in Africa, and I'm happy to meet you this morning. Church World Service is a global organization, and in Africa we are working in a number of countries. Our focus is emergency response, which is also disaster risk reduction, sustainable community development, and refugee assistance. I want to hand over to my colleagues to quickly introduce themselves before I can proceed with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kedagor, Program Coordinator for Emergency Response and Disaster Risk Reduction with CWS Church World Service.
Hello everyone, my name is Wilbert Nango. I serve as the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator based here in Nairobi for Church World Service. Pleasure, thank you.
Morning to you all. My name is Amos Waithaka, working for Church World Service, and I serve as the IT and Monitoring and Evaluation Assistant. Thank you.
That's all about it. We can move to the next session.
Excellent. Okay, I just wanted. All right, so then Mary, if we can move on then to, if you can let us know and talk to us about what's causing hunger in the Horn of Africa and where you are, and what does it look like exactly?
So there are a number of factors that cause hunger in the Horn of Africa. And for this particular season, the problem has been drought. There are communities and countries that has experienced 4 failed rain seasons. That means that these communities have not received rain in the last 4 years, even one drop of rain. And for that reason, they are at a point where the animals are dying. Their crops died long ago. They do not have any vegetation cover, and that means they cannot be able to produce food at all. For that reason, they have to live on support and food assistance. For example, in Kenya, we are looking at 4.9 million Kenyans who actually at a point of they lack food completely, and people can do either 1 meal a day or they can do for 2 days without any food. The moment Church World Service is serving in a county called Marsabit, and Marsabit, we are looking at about 250 people. That's 250,000 people who do not have food. This particular community is in emergency phase. That means they have already passed the crisis phase and they're in emergency phase and they do not have food. And this is actually 55% of these communities are facing high acute food insecurity. They are in IPC phase 3 and above, and IPC simply means integrated phase classification, which means that these particular communities actually lack food in total. So we will be focusing on Marsabit communities because this is where we have been able to spend the $1 million USD that we received from Humanitarian Coalition.
Those numbers are shocking, and definitely to give us an idea of the situation there. And can you tell us, I mean, these are big numbers, but how does that impact families and communities?
First and foremost, maybe I could just drop in something on a bigger perspective, looking at the Horn of Africa, because basically the grants that the Humanitarian Coalition received is focusing on Horn of Africa. And in the entire Horn of Africa, we are looking at about 20 million people who do not have food at the moment. In Kenya, we are looking at 4.9 million, and then in Marsabit, we are looking at a 250,000 people. And Marsabit is just one of those counties. In Kenya, we have like 30 counties who are facing this similar problem. So what this means for communities and what it means for people living in these areas, one is that they do not have, they lack water completely. Because if there is a drought and everything has dried up, then it means that even the water sources have dried up and people cannot be able to access water, and then they cannot be able to access food. So that means they have to revert into other coping strategies. For example, taking 1 meal a day or 1 meal after 2 or 3 days. We have seen cases where families are actually selling off their young daughters just to get some little money for them to be able to buy food for the next day or for the next 2 or 1 week. This also means that women and children are the ones who are hard hit because men will actually move to the further places. They'll also migrate to urban centers and leave women and children behind. So, and the women, children, and the elderly people are the ones who are suffering the most because are the ones who are left behind. I think I'll be talking more on that as we look into the people that are receiving food as per gender and age. We realize that the food that we are receiving, the most people that are receiving this food actually are women-headed households. So we're looking at CWS has been able to provide food to 4,000 households using the money received from Humanitarian Coalition. And on average in Africa, and especially in this area, you'll find that on average, we have a household number of 5 to 6 people. So this particular food is going to get to about 22,000 people, to be exact, 22,441. When you look through the people who are heading this household, you find that over 80% actually these households are headed by women. We are looking at 3,308 female-headed households. We only have 692 which are male-headed, and that tells you, it actually fills up the story that is the woman who suffers most. And in this community is actually, when the worst comes to the worst, is then the women that the kids have to ask food. The children will not go to their father to ask for food, but they'll go and ask food for their mothers. So we are very happy. We are very grateful for this support, because we have been able to serve and support these women for the next 4 months.
I have to say, as a as a mother, my heart breaks just thinking when you speak about having to cut down meals to one meal a day, and knowing that your children are hungry. The hardship is very clear. So you've given us some numbers here in terms of the number of households that have been supported by these programs. Can you talk a bit more about how the funds that were given by the Humanitarian Coalition are being used? So what exactly is being done with the programs?
So for this particular program, and coming from CWS and I think our supporting partner within the emergent programming, is very critical that you focus more on providing the life-saving items, and in this case is food. So looking at that, we could say that more than 80% of the funding that came in went direct to buying food commodities. We have, this particular program is providing, our food basket is for 1 month ration, which is enough to feed the members of the family in that household for 1 month. And we are providing maize meal, we are doing beans, cooking oil, salt, and then we have corn soya blend. Corn soya blend is a very special, we pay a very special attention to corn soya blend, because it's going to households that have children under 5. It's going to household that has a lactating and expectant mothers. And this has a big way on tackling malnutrition amongst this age category and these groups of our beneficiaries. So the program started in September. We have done 2 distributions in the month of September and October, and we are looking into doing other 2 distributions in the month of November and December. So it is a 4-month project, and we'll have put these communities in good shape in these 4 months. But looking forward, we are already experiencing another felt rain. So it means that even by January, February, March, these communities will still be in their need of the food. Actually, the situation is getting worse as we move forward.
That's difficult to hear, and I appreciate that you've made a distinction for donors, that when it comes to the Humanitarian Coalition, for sure, all of these organizations also do development work, but the funds that are being raised by the Humanitarian Coalition is going to emergency help. So it's having this outline in this matter is very helpful. So thank you for that. I think that we wanted to speak about these are numbers and very clear example of what's being done with your organization in partnership with the Humanitarian Coalition. And in terms of a difference, what kind of these the food that we're providing, what kind of difference is that making for families?
I would like to share that by letting the team watch a video that will actually, a documentary that we did following up with the food distribution that we are currently doing, and just trying to focus on a household. What really happens in a household when they receive this food? What was happening before they received the food? What is the impact is this food making to this particular household that actually will be looking into from a general perspective? How is the food helping the 22,000 people that we are serving? So welcome to watch this short video.
Thank you, Mary.
The worst drought ever witnessed in the last 4 decades has currently gripped the Horn of Africa, blistering landscapes threatening to decimate livestock and consequently creating a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented proportions. Driven by climate change, the disaster is also now threatening the very existence of the pastoralist communities living in northern Kenya's counties such as Marsabit. Here is a short documentary from Marsabit County highlighting the drought impacts and the humanitarian interventions deployed by humanitarian partners such as Church World Service. Coping amidst acute food insecurity is grueling and challenging psychologically and financially for women in northern Kenya. Water scarcity also remains a global challenge. However, the situation in Marsabit remains even dire.
Maji huko nyumbani nakuja mpaka nashota hapa. Kwa hapa tena siwezi pata maji kwa sababu natumia soya. Hata kama diesel hakuna mtu sikusi nanunua diesel kwa sababu ni pesa mingi na hata maji kwa chini sijui kama imeenda chini hakuna maji. Sasa sisi yote na mbuzi na kunywa tu maji. Hakuna maji ingine sisi kwa hapa. Watoto wa shule hata saa watoto siwezi kula chakula kwa sababu ya maji.
Women and girls here trek for more than 15 miles a day in search of water. The drought crisis has caused a humanitarian crisis, prompting humanitarian agencies such as Church World Service to swing into action. Nashangai Kongoman is one of the 67,800 residents of Laisamis and North Horr sub-counties in Marsabit County who have benefited from the Church World Service relief aid. When the Church World Service team accompanied Nashangai Kongoi from the Relief Food Distribution Center to her home, the joy among her children, together with the neighbors, was palpable and could not be gainsaid. At least today they have something to eat after skipping 2 meals for 2 consecutive days. Eating 3 meals a day in this region is considered a luxury only left for the well-to-do households.
Kitambo mbuzi yangu ni mingi, mbuzi 50. Kutokea saa hii kwa sababu njali mbuzi yangu ni mbuzi 3 imebaki. Na nashukuru CWS kwa sababu siku hakuna hiyo group hajapatia sisi chakula. Ameona watoto 2 kwa hapa. Mtoto nataka kukufa, si yangu jirani. Lakini mtoto niko na njaa mpaka mtoto nataka kukufa. Mpaka sisi ameenda muomba watu wengine masua anakuja napatia watoto. Hiyo bosho nakula kidogo na hiyo mafuta naweka kidogo mpaka ingine akuje. Kwa sababu hakuna msaada ingine. Hakuna sisi msaada ingine sisi ameona. Hata serikali, sijui kama serikali imetupa sisi hakuna ingine sisi nategemea. Hiyo chakula peke yake hiyo group saa ameletea sisi anategemea.
Thank you so much for this video, Mary. It was very informative for sure, and seeing these live images definitely sort of give it a whole new dimension. If I can, we have Arisnal who asked a question, who I think is very is very in subject with the video we just saw. So she is asking the men who leave, because we see a lot of women in this video, and as you mentioned, most of the households that are receiving food rations are headed by women. So you've mentioned that the men leave. Do they go somewhere where they can find work so that they can, you know, bring back money or send food back home? So where are they going? What's the relationship? What's the plan with men who are leaving?
Thank you. The story is very complex. Now, in a way that the pastoral communities live on livestock, animals. And what has happened is that most men have actually moved away with the few animals that have been left to go and look for pasture and water. The younger men may have gone to look for small jobs here and there to be able to maybe send something small home for either their mothers or their younger wives to buy food. But the reality is that men have gone to look after the animals. Another aspect is that these particular communities that live with the scarcity of resources also experience a lot of conflict. And some households already, we have widows, women who have already lost their husband through the conflict. And in some households also is that in these communities, men marry more than one wife. And for that reason, he may actually be owning about 2-3 households. And for this particular program, we'd want also to focus more on a woman because it's the woman who provides for the family.
I understand. Thank you for that explanation. And I imagine as they're moving livestock this way, they may be gone for a long period of time, especially considering this drought has been happening for years now, and it's really sort of coming to a head. Thank you for answering and giving us a clearer picture of that situation. Following this video, did you have anything else you wanted to share that we haven't covered yet about your program or the impact the programs are having on the families and the communities that you're working with?
First and foremost, I would want to add my voice to Nashangai's voice by saying thank you for the supporters of this particular program, because for the last 2 months and for the next 2 months, we have given families food. And this goes a long way in a way that it creates peace. It leaves families to live in harmony and with love within each other and within neighbors. Another thing I would want to add is that there was a mention of 60,000 families that are receiving food from Church World Service. We received additional funding from Canadian Foodgrains Bank. We received additional funding from PWF, RDF, and also we received additional funding from other partners. And for that reason, Church World Service is feeding over 60,000 families in Marsabit County. But this is among 250,000 people. So there's something very important that I've learned about these families, and I thought I could share this because for me, it just blew my mind. In a way that these families believe that if I'm receiving food and my neighbor is not receiving food, I should not watch my neighbor suffer. And they do a lot of sharing amongst themselves. The second item I also want to mention, you saw that Nyashangai was putting cooking oil in her water to make the little, we call it ugali here, the maize meal food. Actually, the reason why Nyashangai is doing that because they do not have vegetables or meat to use to eat that food. So the communities are also being creative, and they have their own ways of coping. And we, as an organization, we are learning a lot from them, especially in time of disaster. That's what I would want to add.
Thank you. That's very informative again. But I like how you're mentioning that, you know, this isn't just, you know, the learning goes both ways, right? With these programs. So that's always really important in this work to get the feedback from, you know, the communities and the families that are working with their programs, so that we can better tailor services to exactly what they need. So thank you for mentioning that. that's really important, I think, to donors as well. So I think this brings us to an end to you know, the discussions that we had prepared. So I want to say a huge thank you to you and your team for making yourselves available to our donors. And this is the time when we're open the question and answers period. So if anyone has any questions, you can either raise your hands and we'll unmute you, and you're free to turn on your camera if you wish to ask your questions to Mary and her team, or you can also include questions in the chat directly if you'd rather go this way. So please feel free to raise your hands or type in your questions in the chat. So the floor is yours. So we have Arisnel, who's got his hand up. So Sakina, okay, here we go.
Well, I'm here. Thank you very much. Mary, it is nice to see you. This is Arisnel Mesidor from Canadian Foodgrains Bank. We've been in communications. My questions is regarding the men and the livestock. Would there be any possibilities when the men leave to go find water for the animals? Would there be a possibility for them to take some of the animals to some of the cities where people, you know, consume meat, and then sell some of these animals for meat consumption, and then use this money to buy food and come back home? Now, I know this doesn't solve the water problem, but that could probably help with food. And yeah, so I think that's the question. And one could even ask, during the dry season, would the farmers be okay? So now it is time to sell animals, save the money, buy some food, and then when we get rain, then we can go back to pasturing, buying some more animals, taking care of them. Basically, go with the seasons based on what's going on. I hope the question is clear. If not, you can ask me to repeat.
No, the question is quite clear, and thank you so much for asking. These are pastoral communities, and for them, animals are considered a sign of wealth. Animal is not considered as a sign of a livelihood. Us as development agents, we are already doing a lot to sensitize them to do exactly what you are saying, that they can be able to sell in good time before the drought, and then they can keep the money, use part of the money and keep some money to maybe restock when the drought is no longer there. That is a process, and it's going to take very long. On your first question, whether they can go with the animal to an urban center, sell and send back some money. I was in Marsabit a month ago, and I really engaged with households on that point. And it looked like it does not have economic value in a way that I had a number of households. These communities, as you look at them, they're staying very far away from urban centers. So I engaged a number of households or a number of families, and they said if they take a goat to go and sell in the market, they'll need transport that will cost them about $10. And given that the animal has wasted and they don't have body weight, they are likely to be selling that animal maybe for $20. So that means that they are using half of the money that they're selling the animal to actually transport the animal. So there's a lot of dynamics on this, but as development agents, we are trying. And also the Kenya government most recently have actually started going up there, buying all the animals that are not yet dead to take to Kenya Meat Commission and pay these families. I even witnessed one time when they came, they bought the animals, they slaughtered, and they shared the meat to the communities for them to eat. It's a process that people don't accept change very easily, but I guess with time and realizing that effects of climate change are real and they're getting worse every other time, this community is gonna change. Also, I would also like you to note that literacy levels in these communities is very, very high. People have not gone to school and they don't think the way we think. they look at things completely in a different perspective. So long-term activities for these communities would be education, and that will help them to look at things differently.
Thank you so much, Mary. I think that was, sorry, Aries, now you can go ahead.
Well, you just wanted to say thank you, but you were saying thank you for me, so that's good.
Great. I think that was a very enlightening answer, and definitely gives us a good idea of the whole portrait of the situation. I have a very good question here from Janice as well. So Janice Bin is asking, could you clarify the difference between male and female-led households? So does a female-led mean a single mother? Or in other words, if there's two parents, then is it considered a male-led household?
A female-led household is a household that, one, the woman makes decisions. And in this case, we are looking at that particular person who makes decisions on what will be eaten in the household and where the food will come from at this particular point. So this woman may be married, but at this particular point, the husband has gone away for 1 month, 2 months, three months, and have left the woman in charge of the household to make decisions on what the food will be eaten, where the food will come from. So we'll treat that household as a female-headed household. In these communities, apart from widows, it's not easy to get a single woman. Most women get married, but we have a number of them again who have already lost their husbands. Some have their husbands, but their husbands are away and they're not making those decisions. Then number two, when we start identification of beneficiaries on food assistance programs, we don't want to double count the man. We don't want to count the man on his house number 1 and go and count the same man in his house number 3. So we'll count this man in house number 1 as the head of the household. The other 2 households, we are not going to count him. So the female will actually be heading these households.
That's very clear. Thank you. We have a question from Richard, who's saying, thank you, Mary, and your team for sharing with us about your work. Could you help us understand how you identify which communities and households to work with? So he says, I imagine one of the challenges you have is trying to focus your assistance where it is most needed without creating tensions with other households or communities that also have needs.
Thank you, Richard. So we have developed a very clear beneficiary identification criteria. But before we do that, we have what we call County Emergency Response Steering Committee. And we have developed even further to look at a technical committee working on emergency in Marsabit County. So first and foremost, when we receive any funding, we go to this committee and we'll be able to check out. We have other agencies working in Marsabit County. Where are they and what services are they giving? Then within the county government also, we have the Nutrition and Health Department. The Nutrition and Health Department, actually, they are very key in a way that they are helping us identify areas that are hard hit. For example, if you go to Marsabit and you found that North Hall is a place where we are having so many children under 5 on nutrition program. They're already malnourished and they have been put on a nutrition program by the county government. Then that's an area that we need to look deeper into and see what is causing so many children under 5 to be malnourished. Then we will be able to pick on an area that we do not have any other agent doing work. Agencies are there and they're doing different things. We have people who are just transferring money to families, from families to buy food themselves. We have people who are doing water tracking and all that. So the first selection will be areas that are not being reached out with by any services by that time. Then for us to be able to select households, we'll go to households that have kids that have nutrition programs. But above all, I think we have learned a lot from Canadian Foodgrains Bank. and the PWRDF by helping us to come up with a community structure where we select advisory, community-based advisory committee. On this committee, we bring on board faith leaders, we bring on board women, men, local leaders, and they're actually the people who know, who sleeps hungry in this community, who has family members who are working, and they can be able to send them some little money at the end of every month. So the selection is actually done very openly and in public, and the community members will be saying, yes, we think so and so should be on that list. Yeah.
That's really interesting how it's done so openly. And I guess having an open process like this will help, you know, Richard mentioned tensions and conflict between household, but I think having, and I mean, you can speak to that, but I think having this very open selection process will reduce these tensions. Is that right?
Yes.
That's great. I have a question myself. You know, in the video we saw a woman, and well, she was talking about having to walk several miles away from her home, several kilometers away from her home to go and fetch water, and, you know, having to carrying and, you know, kick the barrels around to be able to bring back water. And as we know, these women often have several children, and often in you know, small children, so 5 and less, or, you know, up to 10 years old. And my question would be, you've talked about community, so I have an idea of what might happen, but when these women have to leave the household for a number of hours, how, you know, what's childcare? What does that look like? Are the children left on their own? Are they, you know, is there a woman that stays behind to watch over the children? How is that organized or not? And what kind of impact would having a trucker, you know, a water trucked in, or more easily access to water impact those daily trips to go and get water?
Yeah, I think Nashangai mentioned that they have to walk about 10 and above miles to go and bring home water, and that consumes a lot of time. In some instances, it will even take a whole day. And what this implies is that it really affects the girl child in these families. For example, if I have to go and look for water for the whole day and I have a daughter who is 15 years, then I'm telling my daughter that you look over your younger siblings. And we have seen cases where girls have dropped out of school to support their mothers, especially during drought, during disaster, support their mothers on doing house chores. And for these particular women, it also means a lot in a way that carrying that water that long, it actually really weighs them down health-wise. So they have backache and they have a lot of health-related issues. And when there is water scarcity, then what it means is that other things that are quite basic, like taking a shower, is actually it actually becomes a luxury. They will not take a shower, so you just bring home the 4 gallons of water just for cooking.
Thank you. That's a very helpful answer. Again, and it definitely shows how, you know, it's not just bringing water for drinking, but it kind of affects the whole family. I hadn't even thought of, you know, having that oldest child watch over the children and having that impact their education. So it really has layers, how it impacts a family. We're coming to the end of our time that's scheduled. I have one last question here from NABA, if we can quickly fit that in. They ask, we hear that some agencies offer cash to the target population for them to buy food. Why did CWCS choose to provide in-kind food?
Thank you for that question, Naba. And before we settled into food assistance, we did a quick assessment, especially doing like a market survey for the food. And the reality on the ground is that these communities where they're living, the markets are not functional. So if you gave me, like most people are receiving between $50 to $90, if you gave me $50 to go and buy food, and I cannot be able to access that food on my local market, then it means that I need to go maybe 20 miles to look for food. That means I'm going to pay for transport, and I may use half of that money to pay for transport. Then secondly, I think all of us know that we have food prices. Food prices are going up on daily basis. It's not just a Kenyan problem, but I think it's a global problem. So if you provided food, then it means that the ration that you gave last month may not be, the money that you gave this month may not be enough to buy same food next month. Thirdly, our survey indicated that this money is not put on food 100%. You give me money, I have other basic needs that have not been meeting. For example, school fees for my children, health, I have a health issue that I've been postponing. I have a neighbor who has a problem. So from our survey, it indicated that it's only 30 to 40% of that money that go to buy food. So for that reason, we settled on buying food. And again, we want to thank our partners, Canadian Foodgrains Bank and PWRDF, in a way that we talked to suppliers and we are able to lock the prices of food. So the amount of food that you're buying food in September, it will be the same amount of food. You're buying equal food end of December. And for me, I think that's the biggest achievement that we have achieved on this project. So when you talk to communities or you talk to families, they appreciate the food that we are giving because they are not struggling to go to look for food, and they're not using that money to do something else. Even if they got an extra coin, they know that at home they have food, so they're at peace. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to hear about how locking prices, I mean, it also makes every dollar that's donated go farther in terms of bringing support to the communities. So thank you. That's yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very insightful. So we're coming up to the end of our Q&A, so we will wrap this up. I want to say a big thanks once more to you and your team. This was very informational, really interesting. I think it gave us a perspective that we couldn't have had otherwise. So thank you so much for your time. I want to thank everyone who joined us as well and asked questions and listened in. You know, this is what makes these events interesting. So thank you for joining us. The recording will be available. We will make it available to you. We will send the details later today. And also, since I mentioned this is the first time we are offering this this kind of event to our donors, so if you have any feedback, good or bad, please don't hesitate to send it in at info@humanitariancoalition.ca. We'll be thrilled to hear from you. So if you have any parting word, Mary, I'd like to leave it up to you.
Mine is to thank everyone for coming and to thank the donors for this particular project. I think you have seen what your resources are doing. They're actually saving lives in Africa. Thank you very much and be blessed.
Thank you. So have a great evening, Mary, and have a good rest of their day to everyone else who called in. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.